Hello there, YouTube. This is the Handsome Crayon, and I'm back again with another fan fiction reading. So, without further ado, let's begin. This is Grass by Mozzarella, Chapter 5. Let's get this started. Quote, "Do not worry about your dashes with rainbows. I assure you, mine are still more awesome." End quote. It was a chore to go to sleep. Dash never thought she would think these words in that sequence. Sleep was amazing. How could it possibly be difficult? You just plop yourself down anywhere comfortable and do nothing. Turns out there are some comfortable places in which one cannot sleep. Also, nothing can escalate to something rather quickly. Dash's cloud was flattened under the night's tossing and turning. A cloud. Flattened. That shouldn't have even been possible. They're practically made of fluff. The sunrise was an unexpected relief to the poor Pegasus, since Luna apparently appeared to have forsaken her. It only made sense that Celestia would be her salvation. She could finally give up on her apparently hopeless attempts to rest. Rubbing her eyes did not remove her desire to sleep, nor did her morning stretches. She wanted to go back to bed. However, she knew it would not help. Dash pondered this love-hate relationship as she folded up her sleeping bag. With the package in her mouth, she peeked over to the cloud down to where the nightmare began. There had been a flurry of confusion following what both Pegasus had chosen not to discuss. At first, there was an excruciating silence in the wake of their outburst. It was ages until they gathered their thoughts, separated their bags, and flew to different clouds. Dash preferred to meet normal problems with an extended hoof, one preferably traveling at several hundred meters per second. For problems where this was not applicable, she preferred ignorance. It was intangible, so it must be insignificant. Eventually, the problem would go away. This problem was going nowhere. She had no clue where Blitz had decided to sleep. She wasn't about to call out for him. The less interaction with him, the better. Except that would make it somewhat difficult to train. She scanned the skyscape for any signs of the stallion, hoping he would still be in bed. She could sneak in some breakfast and just wait until they started training to have to talk to him. Short-term plans are Dash's forte. Too bad she made eye contact. Damn it, he saw me. What do I do? She paused, feeling another part of her surface. What's wrong with you? Get out there and practice. I can't. You were what? Say it. She choked back a frustrated shriek. The voice was making absurd requests, like facing her problems. She had liked her first plan better. With a poker face that would have had card sharps cracking up, she fluttered down to the saddlebags. Blitz was a step ahead of her, trying to open it. Hey, she croaked as she approached. Blitz glared at her before averting his eyes. Fine, hey. Dash waited while he cautiously manipulated the flaps. It was as if he had never used his hooves before. The buttons wouldn't unfasten, and the sleeping bag slipped out of his mouth several times. Dash might have laughed at the display if she could find a place for her hooves on the cloud. She shifted her stance again and again, finding that each position put uncomfortable weight on some part of her. So, Dash said, opting to just hover in the air. What's in there for breakfast? Blitz had just left the sleeping bag on the ground. There's Apple's stuff again. Pinky left some baked things. I don't know if they'd be good for flying. She probably left something breakfasty, like Danishes or something. Oh, right. That's what those are. What kind are there? Pink and, yeah, pink. She rolled her eyes. Figures. I guess I'll take the pink one. I'll see if I can find one. He let out a half-hearted chuckle. Dash returned to the surface, looking away. A moment later, she blinked back into reality. Oh, thanks. Blitz cringed. Wow, why did I even say that? He passed her a pastry and took one for himself. The crust was bordering on too flaky. After taking a bite, Blitz found himself struggling to keep the whole thing from falling apart. Still, it was food, and good food at that. Toward the center was some sort of strawberry jam. Something else in it was making it sweeter and much lighter. It wasn't exactly a breakfast of champions, but that's only because they weren't champions yet. Dash wiped some crumbs from her face. Alright, that was fine. We don't need to talk about it. We can just move on. So, how'd you sleep? She said, returning to normalcy for a few seconds. Blitz choked on his Danish. Oh yeah. No, I meant, are you okay to practice? She spat out her words as quickly as possible. It was just a slip of the tongue. Like last night. Part of her mentally added. She imagined punching that part. Meanwhile, Blitz was finishing clearing his lungs of crumbs. Yeah, totally. Let's go. They ascended to the heavens to prepare the sky. Blitz went to work on removing the small, wispy cloudlets in the way. Dash glided around, setting up a proper background, as they had come to call it. From this point on, they had left off at there would need to be a dense sphere in the center of their stage. The day before, the Pegasus had laughed and horsed around during the preparation. Today, only the wind whistled through their ears. It was more fun yesterday. With a decent floating ball before them, they flew to opposite sides a few meters from it. You know the drill? Dash asked. I guess. Yeah. Ready? She nodded and let out a half-hearted, Yo! The sky was rather disappointed. It had grown accustomed to the breathtaking takeoff from the two Pegasus. This one was just pitiful. Sure, their speed was nothing to shake a stick at, but one could comfortably point said stick in their general direction. However underwhelming it was, they were still synchronized during their ascension. They flew high above their target, circling around it in a shrinking spiral. In moments, they were met and pushed off of each other to dart downward into the cloud. The result of the impact was predicted to be awesome by Dash. Blitz had agreed on at the time. That was the day before. The two grew closer in the air. The two grew closer and closer in the air. There was no avoiding it. It had been planned to the individual tilt of the feather. Unfortunately, denial tended to step aside for reality. It won't matter, thought Dash uneasily. It's like a hoof bump. Nothing weird about that. So what if I happen to look in her eyes, those big, shiny, purplish pink eyes? My legs only turned to jelly that one time. It won't happen again. Right. The spirals were about to meet. Following their plan, they shifted their bodies 90 degrees upwards, flying towards each other as if they were standing on their hind legs. Their hooves were outstretched, ready to meet. Dash went over her checklist for the collisions. Hooves in position. Wings flattened to decrease speed. Flying area free of cluster. Partner in position. Face feels extremely hot. Looking away from partner. Clenching teeth. Wait. It was not fun to smack into a pony at high speeds. Bones can handle a lot. They'll still whine about it, though. And then the skin and flesh get involved, crying to Mama Brain. Then the enabler that Mama was, it would go ahead and make sure the problem would never happen again. Instead of the parts bucking up, the mother would go to the cabinet, grab a nice bottle of pain, and clean the house with it. Ugh. The lump of tangled Pegasus spun through the air, experiencing great difficulty extending a wing to guide the fall. Disentanglement was all on their minds. It didn't matter that the ground, despite the distance, would eventually rush to meet them. They just needed to get away. Hooves and muzzles flailed about, brushing against them that which bound them. It just so happened to include flanks and necks and the likes. With plenty of time to spare, Dash and Blitz parted, taking back control of their respective flight paths. Dash had placed her face on her hooves. Blitz clutched at the sides of his head. At the very least, they were synchronized in their recovery. They landed sloppily on the nearest cloud, making an unspoken agreement to take opposite sides of the platform. "Look, sorry Blitz began, turning towards Dash, but keeping his eyes well away. No. It was me. I lost my focus." She tried to put on a smile. "I wasn't all there either." Blitz laughed unconvincingly. "Right. Okay. That's fine. We're just a little off." "Yeah. First flight of the day. Happens all the time. No big deal." Some ponies should get to work on finding a repellent for ticks. 2 Pegasus were itching their backs of their necks like crazy, because it must have because it must have been some sort of tick. Definitely. "Should we go again?" Blitz put out cautiously. "In a minute. I need to, yeah, hold on." They waited a little, pretending to catch their breaths. Dash shook her head as if it would get rid of her distraction. "Ready?" "I guess." The Pegasus had taken their brakes on the sides of the cloud furthest from their starting position. Blitz moved to the right to walk around Dash. She moved to the left. Both stopped. Dash jerked right. Blitz jerked left. "I'll just go this. I'll move that. Just let me go this way." They sighed as their heads sagged forward. Blitz motioned for Dash to go. She nodded and took off, cringing. Blitz continued on his way, holding his head in his hooves. "Why am I an idiot?" "Anatomy," droned a weary tone. The room would have been much too dark to read it to a pony that had enough sanity to care. "Biochemistry." The ladder on wheels rolled smoothly and boringly across the wooden floor. It normally had something interesting to add to the assistant's day, albeit unpleasant. It could tip on some librarian debris or just find another way to expel a little purple passenger off of itself. However, it seemed to lose its will to wreak havoc in the past few hours. It was bored. Everything had taken on a boring hue of brown and gray. Although that could have just been the light, the candles had been replaced several times over, accumulating impressive mounds of wax. "Biology." Spike nodded with fledgling appreciation that his matron had at least alphabetized his works to facilitate the process of returning the books to their places. The elation that normally accompanied finishing an assignment had eluded him. The only comfort he had was that his mind could rest. For now. There was motion upstairs. 4 hooves gradually thumped against the floor. Then a 5th. That was probably her head, Spike thought. She got home pretty late, and she was mumbling. I should really get her checked out. Maybe psychoanalyzed too, just in case. He sighed unhappily, realizing he had just used the word psychoanalyzed in unconscious thought. You win, Twilight. You win. The pony that descended the stairs did not look like a winner. She looked like she had most certainly been beaten repeatedly. She must have not brushed her hair when she woke up. or done any other morning rituals for that matter. Not that I look any better, Spike added. Spike, is that you? She squinted against the flickering candlelight as if she hadn't spent many a night in the same condition. Who else was it going to be? Spike thought of saying, deciding against it, giving his will to live. Hey, sleep well? She rubbed her eyes. Oh, sure, just great. Crazy night out? Spike asked, not looking away from his task. Her head throbbed. You could say that. Do we have anything for a headache? He almost laughed, but the dullness kept its hold on him. You were out drinking all that time? She glared at the dragon who stood temptingly precariously on the ladder on wheels. No, I just had a lot to think about. All right, I'll go whip something up. Spike slid down the ladder without much caution. It would have been an entertaining act of dexterity had there not been an air of gloominess about him. Thanks, she said, approaching the blinds to let some sun in. As they rose, light, much dimmer than she had expected, permeated the dark library. Just how late was it? She opened the windows too, welcoming us any scent that was not paper. Paper meant information. Information meant learning. Learning meant thoughts. Thought meant decision. And decisions were awful. While she blew out the now unnecessary candles, she absently wondered just what exactly Spike was going to whip up. It's not like he knows much about cooking, she thought. Doesn't really matter. He's probably just making some tea. As Twilight swatted a hoof at the unpleasant smoke spewing from the overworked candles, there was a knock at the door. There's always a knock at the door. Never some time to recover. Always with this nonsense. A friendly smile forced itself onto her lips. She had found at a later age that most ponies that one was more likely to make friends, if they are happy and not extremely tired of every pony's bull. She wouldn't admit that she still didn't really get it. Why lie to every pony around you like that? If you're not in the mood to talk, why attract conversation? Well, some chastising from her parents had done away with that little habit. 5 bits says it's her. No way luck is going to turn on me now. A glowing paragon of grace trotted in from the open doors. She contrasted greatly with the unkept librarian. There was no jealousy, though. After all, Twilight just won 5 bits. Good afternoon, Twilight. Sleeping in, I see. Good. You need some time to relax. Thanks for the advice, she muttered under her breath. She shut the door and followed the white unicorn into the room. Nice to see you too, Rarity. Rushing banging of pots and cups sounded from the kitchen upon Twilight's mentioning of the name. Rarity took no notice. So, have you got anything planned for today? I actually was going to just relax today. I'll have to move a lot of things around, but I need a break. Rarity smiled. Lovely. Would you like to go to the spa? The market? Ooh, I bet we can catch the train to Camelot and see the sights. Her eyes sparkled with the possibilities. Or maybe she incorrectly applied her gill letter. Twilight grimaced at the suggestions. Sure, they would be fun, but also distracting. Internal justification of one's past actions would be difficult in any of those environments. Oh, I don't know. I was thinking I could stay in. Rarity tilted her head, not quite understanding what wasn't appealing about those options. Then she shrugged. To each their own, I suppose. Spike entered, carrying a tray with 2 cups above him, as if he were in some sort of gourmet restaurant. Twilight magically picked up the purple mug labeled tea. Thanks. she said, sipping the slightly steaming liquid. There was a hint of honey and something ever so slightly bitter that she couldn't quite pick up place. Surprisingly, the edge of her headache began to fade. Meanwhile, Spike had kneeled down soberly before the love of his life as if she were about to knight him. She giggled and graciously accepted her mug. My, such a gentle coat. Dragon, he corrected, actually beginning to smile. It seemed she had the ability to free him from his post-cramming drolldom. Twilight stood still, staring at the mug. Spike, what did you put in this? One of your tea bags, some honey, and some other stuff. She felt around her mouth with her tongue to take in more of the strange taste. What kind of stuff? Well, you seemed really tense and you said you had a headache, so I put something in to help. Feeling more nervous, she said, What is something? He raised an eyebrow, or scale. Eye scale? Some medicine, don't worry about it. Twilight had to process the information. Medicine. Medicine. I'm feeling tense. Now I'm relaxed. Am I nauseous? My tongue tingles. Is the room spinning? Everything seems so blurry. What's happening? Did you just feed me ketamine? She shrieked, shaking. Spike recoiled. Of course not. I wanted to help you, not knock you out. I made my own little medicine for you. It was a good few steps down from a tranquilizer. You should be feeling a bit better already. She had to admit the pain was leaving her rather rapidly, as were her delusions of declining health. When did you learn to make medicine? Since you forced me to read every medical book we have, he growled. Rarity had started to chuckle at ketamine. She nearly spilled her cup, attempting to stop herself. What's so funny about this? Twilight asked indignantly. He could have just poisoned me. Hey, Spikeazine doesn't have any side effects aside from drowsiness. The dragon folded his arms indignantly. Spikeazine? Spikeazine? Rarity laughed, no longer trying to hide her amusement. This isn't funny, Rarity, the drugged unicorn exclaimed. Of course it is, dear. She leaned over to Spike. Perhaps you should use ketamine next time. He let out a laugh of his own. Rarity? Oh, fine. Honestly, you could at least try having some fun. Twilight huffed and turned towards the baggy pillow she had set out for those young and hip readers that like to sit on weird things. I have plenty of fun. In fact, I spent most yesterday out and about. She plopped down and took another sip of her tea. Despite her objections, she couldn't help but feel invigorated. So I heard, the white unicorn replied, finding a seat by another amorphous chair. Did you ever figure out the apples? Twilight sighed. No, I ruled out everything but dark magic and chaos magic. She remembered her experiences with both those with a shudder. I don't need to divulge into either of those right now. After returning the tray, Spike walked to the front door. Where do you think you're going? Called his paternal figure. I cleaned up the library, I read all your little books, and relieved your headache. I'm going out, and you aren't making me stay in here another day. With that, he stomped out, slamming the door behind him. Twilight stared aghast at where the dragon had been, while Rarity stifled another giggle. I suppose he's around that age. Soon he'll be getting tattoos and going out with the daughter of an upper-class family that doesn't approve of him. They'll run off and live a hard life on the countryside. She sighed and took another sip of tea. Where did the years go, Twilight? Twilight raised an eyebrow briefly. I guess I have been a little hard on him lately. I haven't given him time to himself in a while. He's got it now, so don't worry about him rebelling or anything. Ooh, I just remembered. I heard some nice gossip concerning him. Oh? Twilight said, trying not to seem interested. From who? Rarity gave Twilight a mysterious grin. I have my sources, Twilight, on everypony. The librarian made a note to never do anything remotely scandalous within Rarity's network. So, apparently, she continued, some little filly fancies our little Spiky. Her cup rotated as Rarity exclaimed it with little interest. She found that seemingly nonchalant boasted credibility for whatever reason. There was a sense of elegance about it. Twilight's mouth morphed into an O. That was certainly news. Now, I wasn't told any names, but I can only suspect that it's some pony he actually spent time with every now and then. Twilight could only recall a group of 3 fillies that saw him on a regular basis. You wouldn't happen to be thinking of... I'm not thinking of any pony, Rarity said innocently. Come on, don't be so modest. You must have something more about that. Rarity brushed a hoof through her mane. I'm not holding anything back. I'm not invaluable, darling, however close to it I may be. Twilight pondered the possibilities. It's such a strange thought. What do you think it would be like if it was your sister? If there was ever a benevolent smile, it spread across Rarity's lips. Without hesitation, she began. I would do everything in my power to see that he falls head over heels for her, though fair means or foul. He would see her only and treat her like royalty. They would date faithfully through their younger years, and he would propose, and I would get to planning the wedding. She nearly squealed with delight at the scenario. You don't think there'd be any problems with that? Twilight said, shaking her head. Like being of different species? Oh, piss posh. Love has a funny way of making things work out, you know? Haven't you ever read the fairy tales? Of course she had. However, Twilight had froze with fear at the mention of the L word. It had far too much relevance to the cause of her now irradiated headache. A division was in order. Well, how do you think Applejack would react if it were Apple Bloom? Apple Bloom. Rarity actually had to think about this one for a moment. I can't imagine our Applejack would have objection. She has enough respect for him, though I doubt that little filly has anything on her mind but cutie mark. Then that leaves Scootaloo. Twilight paused to go over what little information she had on the orange filly. Where were her parents anyway? I don't recall ever meeting them. Rarity closed her eyes and flipped her hair to the side. Probably one of those snobby Pegasus types that thinks anything beyond the clouds is beneath them. At least Rainbow Dash has taken her under her wings. She needs a parental figure at least somewhat involved in her life, even if that figure is Dash. Oh, that reminds me. Free up your schedule on Saturday. I need to get your ticket for you. Twilight tilted her head for a second. For what? Oh, right, their show. You got me one? Yes, dear. Did you expect otherwise from me? Well, no, but it's not as if I just expect you to take care of things or anything. Well, you can pay me back by getting a hoof on a balloon and getting that wing spell prepared for me. She blinked hopefully. Twilight was unaffected. I think we'll just stick with the hoof enhancements. We don't need you falling to your death again. Aw, why not? I bet you could give them to all of us ground-bound ponies. I bet we would look stunning. The more powerful unicorn blushed at the praise. Oh, please, could you imagine me with wings? Rarity laughed. I do have to admit, it would be a silly sight, but you don't understand. It was such a thrill. To almost die? Twilight quipped. The white unicorn shuddered. Well, the part before that was thrilling. Yeah, I'm thinking no wings. We'll all gather here before we get going for the spell. She started to scan the shelves for the particular charm, noticing the shelves were in better condition than she had remembered them. I guess Spike does deserve a break, she thought. She felt Rarity's hoof on her shoulder. I understand if you don't want to go on some wild excursion for your day off, but at least allow me to treat you to lunch. I still feel I owe you for, well, I haven't been quite fair with you recently. There was sincerity in those eyes, behind what some would consider to be too much makeup. It felt as if a rather uncomfortable thorn had been removed from Twilight's temple, but she gathered that it would be best keeping from her. Thanks, but you don't have to do that. It's all right, really. However, her stomach grumbled indignantly, as it had been given nothing but tea since the previous day. Drugged tea, no less. No, I insist. Rarity hurried out of the library, which would evidently be left unattended for another day. But I didn't even brush my hair. She immediately felt Rarity's magic weave through her tangled mane. There's no need to worry, dear. Now where would you like to go? It's entirely up to you. This sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, is what would have been coming out of Rarity's mouth had her face not been thrusted into a cloud, her various bruises throbbing, but they were giving none of her attention. They contributed only a background annoyance to her suffering. The practice was not going well, to say the least. Little to no progress was made since the previous day, largely due to the previous night. Although the routine was laid out in their mind, the two Pegasus had yet to pull off a single maneuver without incidents. Their performance was littered with close flying and occasional outright contact. This proved to be a problem when they attempted to meet. More attention was paid to the texture of each other's touch rather than their collective trajectory. Oftentimes, these results were velvety and into something painful. Still, persistence could not be listed among their shortcomings. The craters in the mountainsides could attest to that. Blitz flew sluggishly over to his partner's cloud, not bothering with any sort of acknowledgement of her preset. He probably would have messed it up anyway. He collapsed into a fluff, far more weary than he should have been given the activity. Flying was in his blood, or so he had been told. Dash looked over to him, his chin resting on the floor as if he had lost a boxing match. Minus the small critters that normally circled the losers' heads, he was tired. So was she. Not just fatigued physically. That would have been no problem. It was the thought, the wondering, the incapability of understanding what was going wrong, or rather, the incapability of accepting it. I don't know what to do, she thought out loud. No anger, no conviction, just a statement of truth. We can't keep going like this, Blitz continued for her. We're getting nowhere. We're running out of time, the mayor added. We need to do something. Dash didn't finish their game of finish my sentence. It would have been redundant anyway. The atmosphere was already screaming. But what? She sighed and moved closer to her clone. She met his eyes for a fraction of a second, negotiating a tentative truce in whatever one could call conflict they were having. With her remaining courage sufficiently mustered, she spoke to him directly. All right, no more of this. No more sulking. Blitz rose and nodded his head sincerely. Yeah, we need to just get it all out in the open. So, we're both a little... She groped for the words. Unsure, he suggested. Right, unsure about how to handle what went on last night. And if we just say what's on our mind, it'll all be over and we can get back to work. Yeah. A silence they were all too familiar with descended upon them. A silence of reluctance, of doubt, of discomfort, neither of them wanted to begin what was sure to be an unenjoyable experience. Blitz faked a cough poorly. You want to go first?
No, you go first.
How about we take turns?
That's fine. You can go first.
Damn it, he mustered. So, last night, we cut. The words were cumbersome on his tongue. We were laying pretty close together, he finished quickly, if not aptly. He motioned to Dash. She cringed.
So then you went and,
She swallowed.
smelled my mane.
Her cheeks approached the slightest shade of red.
And I smelled your mane.
Letting out a breath, she passed the conversation reins over to Blitz. There was no good way to say it, given the situation and the ponies involved. No way of dancing around the issue. And he coughed again, genuine this time. At some point, there didn't seem to be enough oxygen in the air. It must have been the altitude. Yeah, that altitude. How am I supposed to say this? Time ticked by as his moment began to fade. He felt like flying away. He could, too. Just pick a direction, go that way, and never see any pony ever again. He sucked in a breath, clamped his eyes shut, and loudly sputtered out the contents of his mind. We made out like hell. You were on top of me, and I felt you up. He swallowed and flung his head back and forth. The well was open and ready to flood the world. They were in much too deep to stop now. She frantically dumped what she had to say.
And it was really hot. I felt your hooves all over me and I tasted your tongue.
So did I. Ugh. They howled in frustration as they fell to the cloud. Burying their faces, no effort was made to hide their now firmly propped up wings. It was out in the open. There would be no use hiding anything. Right? It wouldn't be long until sunset. The sky would become a slightly darker shade of blue, and the wind was building up its chill. The echo of two screams were all that permeated the otherwise serene valley landscape. And of course, two trembling lumps high above it. Gradually, the Pegasus emerged from the clouds. Looks of calm acceptance adorned their faces. With their eyes held shut, they took a deep breath, synchronized breaths, and adjusted their posture, trying to regain some dignity. Dash let out one more exhale before opening her eyes. Blitz looked back at her and nodded. All right, he said. It's all there.
Uh-huh, Dash replied. Are we good now?
Blitz looked around, as if that would confirm whether or not he was good. Sure, I think so.
Good,
Dash said, sounding relieved. Yeah. Blitz turned and trotted over the edge opposed to Dash, looking out to the valley. Dash turned away from him as well. He laid back down on the cloud and tried to finally take up in the landscape. There had been no time yesterday, and no folks today. He could finally see the bushy trees, the specks of distant color where small birds flew, and a thin stream that ran down and away from Canterlot Mountain. If he were a more poetic pony, he would have seen some sort of symbolism in the calm of nature and his newfound calm in his life. The problem that nagged him all day was gone.
Hey, Blitz,
the mare called, her voice quivering slightly. Blitz waited before answering uneasily. Yeah.
Do you feel any different?
There was another pause. A double check. A triple check. Wouldn't want to be mistaken about this sort of thing. Nope. A lump of some sort of heavy metal formed in his chest. His eyebrows crawled upward with concern. He didn't dare look back.
Neither do I.
Her voice trailed off, sowing a foreboding seed of conflict in the air. The stallion didn't want to say it. to tip the precarious fantasy they had haphazardly built up. However, he feared it would burst if the topic was left festered in his imagination. That, he began hesitantly, that didn't help us at all, did it? Some heat in his chest combated the weak wind air at his face.
Nope.
Their heads fell forward, their chins colliding with the cloud. On their stomach, they stared wearily and frustrated sigh.
Damn it.
Damn it! Dash wore her least favorite expression as she scrutinized the water vapor that held her aloft. Defeated.
Yep, definitely water, she thought. So, I guess we're screwed. No chance now. Wonder if we could play off the whole contest like it's no big deal, or I'm not interested or anything. Her stomach clenched with grief. Abject misery was not a very desirable feeling, and of course, it was accompanied by the resurfacing of inner Dash. What the hell are you doing? Moping. If mental constructs could roll their eyes, this one would have. I can tell. Why's that? 'Cause we're screwed. Oh my Celestia. Seriously? Still at this? Get over it. Dash snorted inwardly. Easy for you to say. The voice snorted back. Yeah, it is, which means it's just as easy for you. Now get up. I can't. Excuse me? I can't? Who even are you? I'm Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash! You are Rainbow Dash! You saved Equestria several times, and you're upset about this? About a boy? You know what? This isn't even about him anymore. You don't even have to pay attention to him. But you are going to finish this. Come on, up and at it.
Dash reluctantly pushed herself on her haunches. Optimism comes more naturally with a head held higher. She glanced at Blitz, who remained in the emergency sulking position. She racked her brain for any clues on how to deal with things. This sort of problem was relatively common among young pests, bashful fillies and foals having trouble being quite so close with another in most cases. Luckily, instructors devised a fun greeting exercise in order to integrate the class when they were less than eager to cooperate. It was demeaning, it was humiliating, it was shameful, foolish, and any number of objections that Dash particularly did not approve of. Dash creaked her neck and rose to her hooves. Get up. I have an idea. Blitz complied without enthusiasm. All right. Now, she began, this is gonna sound stupid. Okay, the stallion replied with uncertainty. Like, I wouldn't be suggesting it if I didn't think we needed to. Go on. It's actually really stupid. Just tell me already. She sighed and drew upon the memories of flight camp. Okay, do you remember school at all? Glitch checked his brain, which was little help as usual. He shook his head. Well, in gym class, every pony usually didn't want to play any games where they had to fly close together and all that. She and Blitz shared a grimace at the likeliness of their predicament and to the trouble of the young, shy child. So to fix that, the teacher would put us all in pairs, and she trailed off. Blitz leaned in expectingly. And what? No, I'm not dragging this out again, she thought as she felt herself begin to falter again. We would dance. The stallion blinked at the simplicity of the suggestion and also the bluntness in which his partner had shared it. Dance, he asked. Dance, Dash replied. Together? Together. Like a slow dance? He called it a waltz. The word waltz conjured images in Blitz's mind of snooty stallions in tight suits with snootier mares in two puffy dresses, walking slowly and stupidly around the floor of some event with that one would very likely try to and miss. Dash could be accused of having to tend to her poor sick friend Bourbon at the candle shop in Trottingham to miss just such an event. At any rate, he was not all too eager to be waltzing, especially with a mare he couldn't stand to lock eyes with, much less hooves. "Are you sure this will help?" he asked, doubting, practically shouting from his eyes.
No, Nash admitted. It probably won't. But I'm running out of ideas, and we're running out of daylight.
Indeed, the light was receding, but there was a whole day and the following morning before the deadline, plenty of time to ostracize their performance. A wave of exasperate apathy swept over Blitz. He felt there was nowhere left to fall but off the cloud, and he was certainly he could handle that drop, but there was no reason not to try. "Okay," he said with some difficulty, rising in the air. "How are we going to do this?" Dash followed him up, hovering before him.
I never really paid attention to what exactly we were doing. To me, it looked like we were flying around in circles.
"That sounds easy," Blitz said, sounding relieved.
Holding each other. Like this.
She finished with a look that did not exactly inspire confidence or comfort. One foreleg curved around an invisible pony, and the other held on to the opposite side, presumably holding the invisible pony's hoofs. Blitz awkwardly mimicked the position, looking at her and imagining himself replacing the invisible pony. She would have been holding on to him, and he her, with hooves like her hooves would be like in his. He shivered. Nope, I can't. Can't do this." The voice brought forth the most disappointed tone. "Oh no, not this again. Can't do it," he repeated in his mind. "Why not? And don't start with one on you being afraid. You both agreed." He offered no response to that. "If you can think of one reason to be afraid, I will gladly stop arguing with you. Go ahead. Name one." Still no reaction. His eyes were fixated upon the invisible pony, and what with him being invisible and all, they naturally fell on Dash. Her legs were still held out in the air, of course. Inward conversations were notorious for brevity. She looked back at him, almost feeling the sensation of her invisible pony, almost wanting to feel them. "I guess we should start," Blitz said quietly, drifting towards her at a maddeningly slow pace.
I guess we should,
Dash whispered. They had what could loosely pass as a collision. Her eyes held on their hooves as if they were paying all of their attention to their poses. Dash placed one of his shoulders and one off to the side. Blitz caught that one and held it aloft. Perpendicular to their bodies, his hoof, wrapped around her waist, went above her tail, and a protective father would have been satisfied. They spent some time just hovering in the air. Their wings eventually synchronized, bobbing them up and down as one. They made a minute shift in their position and just definitely did not pay attention to the soft, warm fur they each held before them. A thought crossed Dash's mind that made her want to throw up a little more. There was no music, save for the whistling breeze. There would be nothing to give them any indication of when or how to begin. In short, things were going to get awkward.
Not if I start this first,
she thought.
Okay,
she said much more confidently than she felt.
Let's go.
She gave a short flap of her wings and set them into motion. The maneuvering at first propelled her muzzle further into Blitz's neck. She sighed, remembering the sensation of the previous night, then quickly aimed her attention elsewhere over his shoulder. The stallion held his head high, though not for dignity or any such delusion. He simply wanted to keep his nose far from her mane as possible. Still, the tantalizing scent of fruit and flower reached him, beckoned him into the multicolored thickness below him. He tried very hard to ignore the urge, though her surge towards him made this more difficult. Their straight-line path hardly seemed like a dance, so some part of Blitz, concerned more with style than desire, beat one of his wings, sending the two Pegasus into a slow spin. The new movement necessitated a slightly stronger hold on one another. However, they overestimated the force that drew each other inward tighter. Neither recoiled. Dash's breath grew heavy and hot. She could tell that Blitz had done the same, given his quickly rising and falling chest. "You're both nervous," Hermione said softly, for once without disdain or sarcasm. "Sooner or later, you'll have to accept you're pretty much the same," said Blitz, "afraid of the same things." "But," Dashes continued, "you have to remember, you probably want the same things too." They floated without changing for several minutes, their bodies relaxed and attention shifting from fidgeting to thoughts. "The same thing," Blitz breathed out, staring off into the sky. Dash leaned her head and looked at him. "Oh, nothing," he dismissed. "Oh." She held her eyes on his face for a moment, then looked back over her shoulder. "You know, I never really liked how we always did this silly dancing thing all slow." "I can see why," Blitz agreed. "It gets a little boring." "What do you say we bump it up a notch?" Fire kindled in her eyes, replacing that fear. Her mouth curled up in the faintest of grins. He couldn't help but recuperate. "You read my mind," he said. Then, with a swift motion of his wings, he sent them twirling faster. Their increased speed fueled her smile. The air once again became her element. That's all the situation needed to become fun again. A little speed. As she relieved her newfound comfort, Blitz's smile grew mischievous. "Yo, Dash, heads up." She hardly had enough time to say what before the stallion pushed off of her, sending her spinning even faster. It was disorienting, but a pony can handle the Dizatron can handle a little spinning. She scanned the world as it spun around her, looking for her partner. He appeared behind her, wrapping his hooves around her in a way that would make the aforementioned protective father somewhat uneasy. He didn't really absorb the impact as much as he simply matched her speed. His head leaned down next to hers, grinning widely. "How was that?" he asked against the cold air blowing in their ears. Dash tilted her head back to rest on him. "Not bad, Blitzy. Not bad at all." She twisted back around to face him, pressing her hooves against his shoulder. "Only, I was thinking something a bit more like this." As the words left her mouth, he began feeling. Crap. As the words left her mouth, he felt himself begin flipping upside down, so his hind legs pointed towards the sky. Just as quickly, Dash shot above him, leaning him only able to crane his neck downward, which was actually skyward, to watch her. A second of obscenely fast dashing later, she instantly stopped herself upward motion and aimed back down for a dive. Eyeing Blitz's rotating carefully, she launched toward the ground with one powerful flap of her wings. The mare rocketed in the direction of her stallion's face, barely giving him enough time to move out of the way, assuming he was already planning to spin into her. Her streamlined body was ground-bound. Time slowed as she reached him. Her hooves pointed in front of her, and her mane was dazzling, seemingly suspended in air. Without thinking, he clamped onto her, around her flared wings and slender frame. Their united entity still maintained most of Dash's speed and Blitz's spin, but he didn't really care much. His snout thrusted into a wall of blue fur, with his eyes closed, twisting his wings, arcing their course until they were parallel to the ground, all on instinct. Her neck closed around his head, and her hooves clutched onto whatever part of him they could find. Blitz could feel every beat of her heart and every frustrated breath she took in. Suffice to say that he and she were truly enthralled. So enthralled, neither of them saw the rather large clump of clouds that floated in their way. The Pegasus drilled into the obstacle, feeling both their forward motion and their rotation abruptly slow down. The deceleration left them dazzled and a bit woozy, but covered in fluff and clutching warmth. When they decided which way was up, they squirmed through the natural pillow until their upper halves were free. Dash took a gulp of unobstructed night air, throwing her head back to take in the cold winds. Blitz just laid back, content to cool off without having to move. Dash found herself falling in the exact same exhaustion, soon enough and fell to the cloud. Rather, she fell to what separated her and the cloud, which turned out to be Blitz. She caught herself not an inch away from his face, breathing heavily onto him and looking directly into his half-closed eyes. The words left them behind as they stayed in that position. The night just proceeded around them as they proceeded their options. One reason. Blitz reached her head and gently swept her mane from her face. The same thing. Dash's forelegs grew weak and tucked themselves over his shoulder as she fell. Her mouth closed around him. Their eyelids fell. Instinct took over. Their conscious minds went blank. That was the end of Chapter 5. Tune in next time for Chapter 6. Bye.